All right. Welcome, ladies, to this episode of the Joyful Scaling Podcast. I am here with a woman that I'm so excited to introduce to you. Her name is Brielle Cotterman. She is a TEDx speaker and a publicity expert. And I love this. She's a celebrity maker. Who doesn't want to be a celebrity, right? We are all entrepreneurs and we want to be known. Well, Brielle helps her entrepreneurial clients craft and scale to seven figures and beyond by leveraging their personal stories and their passions. She does that through creating speaking tours for them, books and media placements, things like that, so that millions are inspired by her clients' messages. They regularly appear in amazing publications, including Entrepreneur, Forbes, Fast Company, Martha Stewart Living, InStyle Magazine, and appearances on TV, of course, NBC, CBS, and many, many more. Let's say hey to Brielle. How are you?
Hello, I'm fantastic. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. This is so good. Publicity, that's one of those topics I know many women kind of shy away from, but I love it. So I'm so excited. Let's jump right in. Actually, let's give the ladies some context about your background, what led you to be doing this work, and then let's jump into the power of publicity.
Perfect. So, Judy, I have been in the publicity world for more than a decade. I, prior to that, was in very high level sales and marketing. And before that, I myself was a professional speaker and I traveled speaking on behalf of charitable organizations. And all of my years of experience really led me to the place where I kind of scrapped the entire idea of a traditional PR firm because I, like you, love publicity and I love PR, but I also love profit. And it's really important that we use publicity strategically. So what we've created is a little bit more like an executive level finishing school. So we go start to finish. We train every single one of our clients so that they are fully prepared for those publicity opportunities. And then on the post publicity side, after we get them those wonderful appearances or features, then we teach our clients how to use every single publicity opportunity as a funnel and really use it to turn that publicity into profit.
Wow. Okay. You already said the magic S word that I love, strategy. We're not just going to be doing for the sake of doing, right? We want to do things strategic, find strategic placements, and then the leverage at the back end. And I will be the first to admit, I am not leveraging the places I've been, both in print and, on television. So can we walk through that a little bit as to how you leverage the publicity? And I love how you mentioned you create a funnel from each one of those. Can we go into that a little bit deeper?
I would love to discuss that. So here's the thing, in this day and age, it's tricky, especially in the online space. And I'm talking service providers, I'm talking coaches, everybody from the attorneys to the intuitive coach to the yoga instructor, everybody needs a brand. And like you said, who doesn't want to be a celebrity within their own niche? And so when we start off and we look at crafting a strategy around not only the media training that's required, but also what opportunities are we going to procure for our clients? Where do they need to be featured? Where should they, where can they speak to their ideal client? Because we want to take all of those things into consideration. People often get hung up on those big giant features, which we get for our clients, the Forbes, the Entrepreneur, Martha Stewart Living, Inc., all of those. And we all want those for credibility markers. But the reality is, if you have a really finely tuned publicity strategy, you are going to be able to be making appearances on podcasts where, maybe they have a couple thousand of a devout following, or you're going to be published on some blogs where they may have 5,000 devoted readers. And those are the places where we're going to be able to take a larger percentage of those readers, of those listeners, of those followers into your world and move them one step closer to you. And that's ultimately what we're trying to accomplish for each and every one of our clients. And when we use those publicity opportunities as a funnel, I always talk about creating that lens of consistency. And I think this is where a lot of people mess up. We want people to know, like, and trust us. And so when they experience us on a podcast, or they experience us through reading an article that we've written or somewhere where we've been quoted as an expert, what's that journey look like? How do we map out that client journey? Because that's a prospective client It's just a little further out, and the vision is that we want to continue to move them one step closer to you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So as a practice, let me just throw out one example. Okay. In
Mhm.
September, I was here on local Charleston television. And so it was a really neat feature. They were very great to work with. And so I pointed them to a URL where they could download my ultimate scaling guide, and hundreds did. And it was pretty
Amazing.
amazing. Yeah. And then, so I assume that's what we're talking about, right? That we would have the funnel where you're pointing them to something, and then there's something after, there's the follow-up after to keep the engagement.
Absolutely. And we're going to be nurturing those people. So those people who have seen you on TV, clearly they're interested in you, they feel connected to you, and they want to know more about you and what it is that you're offering. So first things first, not only are they going to get your download, they're going to check out your social media. So is your social media congruent? Is it through that same consistent lens? Are you showing up the same way? Are you delivering a consistent message? Because it's really easy for people to have one thing that kind of throws them off, and then they go on to something else, especially if they're online. I think it's like 90% or something like that. Then they just go down a rabbit hole and they look somewhere else. So as you're getting these hundreds of people who are coming into your world and they're getting that complimentary download, chances are they're checking out your social media. And just FYI, media decision makers also check out your social media. So all of your appearances, all of your messages, all of your pitching, it should all be very cohesive. And as you're getting these new people into your space, not only do you want to continue to nurture them, you also want to leverage that opportunity with your existing audience. So I don't know how much promotion you did around the fact that you had this beautiful appearance on television, but if you didn't, I always tell my clients and people when I'm speaking, don't ever be afraid to resurrect publicity opportunities and appearances.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. I mean, I did tell people locally because they could watch it locally. And then later that day, I just said, here's the video, let's go. And I did a couple of days of stories on Insta as well as on Facebook, but then I haven't really done much with it, except it is a feature on my LinkedIn. So
that's great. Yeah. So those are great things. You're checking off a lot of the boxes there. And we also want to use it from the perspective of this is a marketing tool. And yes, we're using it. We're creating these stories around it. One of the things that I love to recommend for my clients when we're talking about turning that publicity into profit is to create a story series around the overarching topic of your appearance. So the overarching topic of your appearance clearly was scaling. And then what's a story series that gives them a personal connection to you? Because when those people read that complimentary download, they're going to go check out your Facebook. They're going to go look on Insta. They're going to check you out on LinkedIn. And then it gives them a reason to follow. It gives them a reason to stay actively interested in you. And one of the things that it does more than anything is that it warms up your existing audience. And I hate to use the term that low-hanging fruit, but there are people in your audience who are prospects and they're kind of buzzing around you. They're interested, they're consuming your content. And what media does is it gives them that third-party verification. So when we honor these media opportunities for the big deal that they are, because that television channel, they could have chosen anyone and they chose you. And that's how we need to honor that to our audience, because it's just human nature. Once someone chooses something, it's much easier for us to do the same. So that third-party verification from a buyer psychology standpoint is vastly important.
Wow, that is so good. And you said that story is so important. So I want to talk about your breakthrough story, which I know you are really great at this when you work with your clients. It's the most powerful tool that we have, right? I mean, storytelling is how we connect with people, and it's how we kind of bring people in and become loyal followers, if not clients, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, that's the thing. We are, I will say now more than ever, we are created for connection. And it's so important when we have been through all of the social distancing and everything that we've experienced. It is more important than ever to create connection with your audience. And by that, I mean, we have the incredible opportunity. I'm here in the state of Kentucky, and, you're outside of Charleston, and we are able to talk through the screen, which is a beautiful gift. But at the same time, it's also a huge hindrance to human connection. So we have to be even more thoughtful about the words that we're saying and the stories that we are telling and how we're delivering them. Because the breakthrough story, that's basically the story of your why. And here's the thing, I can ask you, Jody, what is your why? And that's kind of this hot button word, and people have been using it for years now. But the thing is, if you tell me that in a story format, that's what I'm going to remember about you. People, human beings, we've been teaching with story ever since, think about like the hieroglyphics and the scratchings on the cave walls. And we do that for a reason, because it's the easiest way for us to learn and retain knowledge. And it keeps people top of mind. It also, the breakthrough story, the really important pieces, people often get scared to share their challenges. And sharing that challenge creates a sense of connection. But there are 3 parts to every story: the beginning, the rise, intention, then the major transformation or the climax, and then ultimately the rise. That's the most important part, that rise. And a lot of times people forget to tell it.
Okay, that's interesting. Can you give an example of that? Like I
100%.
Yeah. Okay, good. If you can just elaborate and clarify that.
So if you think about, so we call it the breakthrough story because it's typically based around a major breakthrough or transformation in your life. And it also gives you the opportunity to break through the noise. So I'm just going to give a really simple example. Okay. And this is just basic elementary example so that we can see where we're headed. The 3 pieces of the story. Jill was trying to decide what college to go to. She visited 2 schools and loved one. She made a lot of friends, major transformation. And now Jill has gone there and she's having a beautiful experience in college. So those are the 3 segments of the story. And here's the important part. When we share a challenge, trying to make that tough decision, we allow people to connect with us. So mentally, so my undergraduate degree is in statistical analysis. I like to know why things work the way they work. So mentally, when I share my challenge, even though your challenge may be different, it allows you to evoke some similar emotions. So it allows you to recall emotions that you felt when you were experiencing a challenge, and it lets you feel seen. It creates a connection. And then when I share my rise, how I have risen after my major transformation, that's what ultimately inspires action. And so as an entrepreneur or a business person, that's the most important part of your story. You can tell who you were before, you can tell how the tension was rising, you can tell the major transformation. And oftentimes we leave off the rise simply because we're living it. And it's just common sense to us. But that's the most important part of every single story. And if we leave that off, then we are leaving money on the table, and we are also leaving off the opportunity to inspire action.
Wow, I love that. And because I work with hundreds of women through just the past couple of years, I'm thinking that we ladies tend to not toot our own horn in that regard, because there's this sense of, oh, I don't want to be braggy, or I don't want to make somebody else feel bad. And I work with my clients on that all the time. And it's like, look, your would-be clients need to know how amazing you are. Okay. So it's not bragging, but real quickly, I just give them the doctor frame, right? I mean, do you want that doctor that's going to brag about where she went to school? Or are you going to want the doctor that's ashamed to say where she went to school? And you're like, oh my goodness, I don't know. She doesn't seem like she knows what she's doing. And I don't even know if she graduated or not. So I wanted to kind of bring that point home. And if you have anything further to add to that there, that we can't just leave all of our accomplishments kind of, like you said, just sitting there. We've got to toot our own horn in that regard.
You are completely correct, Judy. I love the way that you referenced or, framed that with the doctors, because it's completely true. And especially with women, we often have a really hard time talking about our accomplishments. It's really a much easier exercise to speak about them in the form of a story, as opposed to rattling off a list. And not only is it easier for us, it's also easier for those who are listening to recall and remember, and it inspires action. So one of the ways that I relate this to my audience is, if we're talking about pitching the media, they are people too. So when we are pitching, we don't want to send out into the world this laundry list of accomplishments. Okay. That's incredible. And that's one of your credibility markers. But what they are looking for, just like what you and I are looking for, is a story that creates connection. That's what moves people into saying yes. That's what moves them one step further towards, one step closer to being your client from that prospect space. And
Absolutely.
so really owning it.
Yes, I love that, owning your story. And you hit the nail on the head in that as this podcast grows, and November, we had more downloads than ever before. I mean, we were in the
Amazing.
momentum, so it's super exciting. Yes, indeed. But I get pitched all the time, and I'm always looking for someone who has a unique angle. Like, what is your hook? Like, 10,000 people could talk about publicity. What's your hook? Or for me, when I know I'm pitching, it's like, okay, how many other scaling business strategists are there? A lot. So
right.
So yeah, we really have to, as you say, own the story so that we can say, okay, here is our subject matter expertise, but what's our unique approach to it? And what are our experiences? How do they tie into that so that the whole package is something that's unique?
Absolutely. And that's why the power of story is so incredibly important. That's why it's one of our most powerful business tools and one of the least utilized business tools.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I hope not the least after the ladies listen to this and take action. Well, I want to turn a little bit and talk about your story, because you, like me, have overcome domestic violence. And actually your situation was considerably, beyond that. So I would love for you to just take a few moments, if you would, and share that unique story.
Yeah. And, I'd love to share with you my breakthrough story. As I mentioned, I gave you my professional background earlier. I've always been very involved in the public eye. I competed in the Miss America organization many, many years ago, and I'm a world sprint champion equestrian, and, educated, successful. And I was in a place where I was not aware that mental and emotional abuse is also considered domestic violence. This was not something I grew up around, so it was very foreign to me. I didn't know what exactly I was involved in, but I just know it kind of felt off. And so I think it's very important that we recognize that the media does not do a very good job of portraying what domestic violence and intimate partner abuse can look like. It does not discriminate. It happens to every education level, every socioeconomic background. It happens to people who walk across the Miss America stage. It happens to people who, work in every aspect of life. Nobody is exempt from this sort of issue. And I myself am a survivor of attempted murder and intimate partner abuse. And I let that story own me for a very long time, Judy. So here's the thing. I had been working in the PR space. This has happened many years ago. My son was a baby at the time, and it was a scenario where I let that story own me for many years, more than 5 years, before I ever was able to share those stories. And I let it keep me small, let it keep my business small, and it diminished my personal and professional confidence. And so I was working with a client based out of London, and she had written a book about a major transformation that had taken place in her life. And her mother was a celebrity, and she wrote about her own midlife crisis kind of thing that she had recovered from and what she had learned from it and how she could help other people. And she said to me, I know that you don't feel comfortable sharing your story, but you really have to, because I've spent years trying to find someone who could help me. because I knew I wanted to make a positive impact in the world. And you have to share your story for people like us. And so being a publicity expert, I sent out, I said, I know that I do, but I'm so scared to share the story and all of the shame that goes along with being a survivor of abuse. And so I sent out multiple pitches that evening about my story. And in the PR space, sometimes you hear back right away. Sometimes it can take up to 6 weeks. Sometimes you never hear back from a pitch. That's just the way it goes in the PR world. And I can tell you this, in less than 24 hours, it was like the universe was like, I got all of these yeses back. And then I was like, okay, well, now I have to tell the story. And what I have done after the fact is I totally transitioned my business. 4 years ago now, I totally transitioned my business. And where I had previously served a lot of professional athletes and authors, not because I pursued them, it just happened that way. Sure. I now serve people who not do they only want to be, the go-to person in their niche. Not only is it that they want to be that niche celebrity, but they also want to change the world. They also want to make a positive impact. And that's why my work is based around story. That's why the breakthrough story is so vastly important to me. That's, the topic of my TEDx is the stories that we don't tell, and really coming forward and encouraging women, specifically women, but I do work with both men and women, but specifically women. We don't have to hide behind these stories. And whether it's discrimination or abuse or oppression or mental illness or any of those things that were once considered taboo, we're in a place right now where we have the opportunity to change the future and to make it better for future generations. And that's going to take us owning those stories and those experiences. I appreciate you sharing with me about your experience as well. And it's something that's so prevalent. That's the whole point. It's not something to be ashamed of, because we're not alone.
Amen. Amen. And that's exactly what I said before we started recording. I had told you that I was just talking to a woman a day or two ago. And when you bring it up, like when I brought it up about I don't even know why I brought it up, but that's when she said, oh my goodness, me too. And so if anyone's out there listening, and this is not the first time I brought this subject up, but maybe there's a reason why God keeps bringing people here who, have gone through this and are on the other side of it. If anyone's listening right now and you're in the midst of it, and I just want to lightly talk on this for a point. It's easy when you're in that situation with a narcissist or mentally ill or whatever the situation, for you to, as the loving person you are, make excuses for it. And, oh, it's not that bad, or, oh, it won't happen again. But look, if you're in that cycle, please get help. And know that I certainly wouldn't judge you. I'm here to help you. I have no doubt Brielle would also help you. I mean, reach out. Do not be alone. Do not be alone. And I love what you said. I wrote down so many things that you said. I've got a whole notebook here practically.
Well, great.
You said. First of all, I love that you're an action taker. And it speaks to the kind of person you are. I love action takers. And, when the woman in London said, you've got to tell your story, you didn't, wallow on it for like weeks and months. That night, you're like, okay, I'm going to write my pitch. I'm going to send it out and we're going to see what happens. So that's just amazing. And
thank you.
Do not hide behind your story. Wow. I'm just going to sit on that tonight, really, and think about that, because when we don't share the good and the bad with our audience, whoever that may be, not only does our audience miss out on that, and we miss out on the connection, but again, if we didn't talk about this today, a listener wouldn't have gotten this confirmation maybe that she needed, that, I'm drawing the line in the sand. This is it. I'm not taking this anymore,
100%. And I think it's a really important reminder, just like you said, the narcissistic abuse, mental and emotional abuse is still considered abuse. And so if something feels off, it probably is.
Yeah. Yeah, I think God gives us with that intuitiveness where if something doesn't feel right, then don't make excuses and say it's me. Get help for you and for the other person. Well, listen, this has been just amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise. I want to make sure that our audience knows about an upcoming live publicity intensive. Tell us about that if you would.
Yeah, so our live publicity intensive, we do one each quarter. It's a really incredible program. It's 2 days. It's completely complimentary. And what we do is we really set the stage for the next quarter. What are the things that you need to be thinking about? It's the value is through the roof, and that is my way of giving back. It's the way that I help people to prepare. We even do a mini strategy session to look at how can I utilize publicity, pursue publicity, and use it to leverage my business.
Wow. Wow. I love that. A mini strategy session. That is just beautiful. So we'll drop the link in the show notes. And for listeners who want to find you, Brielle, what's the best place?
So I am on all social media handles and my website. Everything is Brielle Clutterman.
Okay, super. And that's Cotterman. You're going to get those in the show notes as well. Okay, last question, Brielle. This is called joyful scaling. So tell us, what do you find most joyful about running your business?
Well, I feel like I have stepped into, at the urging of my client, sometimes we need just that little extra push to do exactly what it is that we feel like is our heart's desire. And for me, I stepped into my soul's work, and that is exactly what I get the opportunity to do every single day. I get to help people step onto the world stage, fully prepared with an incredibly powerful message and make a positive impact, not just in the world, but on their bottom line as well.
That's awesome. I love it. Brielle, thank you. What a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful to be here.
Absolutely. And ladies, listen, if you've loved this episode, please leave a rating and a review, especially on iTunes. Let the world know about this podcast and let me know what other guests and topics you'd like us to cover, because your feedback means the world. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and we will see you next time.